All right, so now I want to get straight into the sections of the Companies Act. Now that we understand the purpose of this act, we're going to look at sections 2 and 3, which deal with the definitions of related and interrelated persons, control, and subsidiary relationships. And guys, the reason we look at this now is because as we get into certain decisions, certain transactions that are governed by the Companies Act, they will mention that this action should not be done by a director or somebody related to the director. Now you understand what related is, so when you get to that, you can look at a scenario and go, oh, that person is related to the director, so that transaction shouldn't be happening. Okay, so on its own, these two sections mean nothing, but we've got to take our understanding from here and use it every time we see in a section that they mention related, and then in a question, when we see the relationship, be able to say, yes, this is a related person in terms of the Companies Act or not. Okay, so how the Companies Act does it is it looks at two different types of relationships. It first looks at natural persons and the types of relationships they have for them to be considered related, and then it'll look at your juristic persons and the type of relationships juristic persons would have in order to determine if they are related or not. Guys, remember, you have done related parties already, and in our IAS 24 accounting standard, related has been discussed. This is now a different set of rules for related. These are what the Companies Act deem related, and so it's not as broad a category as those. Okay, look at what they say is related. So, for a natural person, so a director, you would be considered related to somebody if you are in 2 degrees of continuity or 2 degrees of affinity. Now, continuity means blood relation, and affinity means married relation. Okay, and now we're saying within 2 degrees. So if I say you are the person and I put you here in the middle, the first degree of continuity is going to be your parents, because you are blood related to your parents, and then your children. Okay, within 2 degrees, you've got your grandparents and your grandchildren. And within 1 degree, you've got your siblings. And that is all that the Companies Act says is considered related by continuity. By affinity, so I'm going to just now put this in green. By affinity, so by marriage, you and now your spouse are related within 1 degree. And then your spouse's parents, so your in-laws, would be considered within 1 degree, and your in-law grandparents. If your spouse has children that are not yours, your stepchildren. And if they have children, then your step-grandchildren. And that is all a related party would be considered to be related in the Companies Act. Oh, and obviously, sorry, your spouse's siblings. Okay, so you're looking at it and you're going, me, if I have a brother, a sister, a parent, a child, a grandchild or grandparent, then I'm related in terms of the Companies Act. My husband, I'm now related, and then all of those on his side become related by affinity. Nobody else, cousins, aunts, uncles, are not considered related when it comes to the Companies Act. Very different from how we understand related to be per IFRS. Then, a natural person can be related to a juristic person if the natural person has control over that juristic person. Okay, and how would you have control? By shareholding. So just so we can see that now these two parties can interlap, a natural and a juristic, provided you have control, only control. If you have a small percentage in a company, you are not considered related. Can you control it? Yes, then you are considered related. Okay, so now let's look at juristic persons. Any juristic person would be considered related to a natural or another juristic person if there is control. And how is control determined? Well, either you will have to be able to control the majority of the voting rights, in which case we're saying you hold the majority shares, or you are able to control the majority votes on the board. So of the board of directors, you are able to control those directors' votes. How? Maybe you appointed the directors, so ultimately they are loyal to you. Okay, so if we can see a subsidiary to a holding company, we've got a related party because there's control. There's also another type of control. If I've got a holding company that holds 100% and 100% in two different subsidiaries, subsidiary 1 and subsidiary 2. Because holding owns the majority of the voting rights in subsidiary 1, they're related. And in subsidiary 2, they're related. And now, because the same holding company controls the two subsidiaries, these two are also related. Okay. But they would only be considered related if they were both majority owned by the same holding company. So you put another subsidiary in here who's got 20%, and this subsidiary 3 is not considered related to either or any of those bodies because there's no control there. All right, so just so that we can see when we start to see companies now interacting or transacting with each other, we've got to look at, is there control between one of these? Yes, then there's relation. No, then they're not considered related. And any restrictions on a transaction for a related party would then not be applicable. So examples of where we're going to see related and interrelated so that you can start to now picture where those criteria are going to come into play when we're looking at the annual financial statements and in terms of the disclosure of remuneration. Approving of shares issued to certain persons. Once again, who are those certain persons? Are they potentially related to someone? Financial assistance either to a shareholder or to a director, now obviously to somebody related to those. If a company or subsidiary is acquiring shares in the company, once again, are we now related? How is that going to impact? Director having a personal financial interest or somebody related to a director having a personal financial interest, your director's conduct or somebody related to the director, and then your auditors and your auditor committee, because obviously they cannot be related to somebody that is part of the business if they need to be independent. Let's quickly go into the Companies Act, sections 2 and 3, so you can see this. So here we are, section 2, related and interrelated. First, we're looking at individuals being related, and it says you can be related if you are married or live together in a relationship that's similar to marriage, or if you are separated by no more than 2 degrees of continuity or affinity, and see adopted is included there. Then B looks at an individual related to a juristic person, and it says only if there is control. If we move down, we see control is if it's the majority of the voting rights, or if they have the majority of the voting of the board. So we've got two different sets of voting rights here. We've got AA, which is looking at shareholders' votes. And then we've got BB, which is looking at directors' votes. And it says if you are able to appoint or elect the directors, that could be an indication of having control over their votes. Okay, and guys, later on we're going to see when each have their chance to vote, what decisions they control. And guys, remember we said because the whole point of the act is to ensure that the company is run fairly to all persons. And so that's why there are decisions that the shareholders will take and then decisions that the directors will take. Okay, let's move on to section 4.